extended delay. And then on July 26th, we had a delay due to the master controller, which is how the operator gives power to the vehicle. Here's an area where we are making an investment in the BRADAs. One of the areas of vulnerability is these master controllers. So we're in the process of a capital campaign right now to replace the master controllers, which will shore us up from this type of issue in the future. We're not doing a massive investment in the BRADA, but we do have about $10 million of really strategic investments that we're making, and this is an example of one that is badly needed. The next delay that I want to talk about is not in the subway, which is what I've been typically focusing on, but I do want to talk about the fact that we had a pretty significant delay on the Sunday of outside lands. My goal for any special event besides delivering fabulous customer service and introducing new people to the system is to stay out of the paper. And for the most part, we have really been able to do this. We've had incredibly successful special events over the last 3 years, but that was not the case on Sunday, where we had kind of a unique problem. We had an operator who was driving a vehicle and he pulled up to an accessible stop. Unlike the other V4s where we can just raise the steps at the front door, the BRADAs raise the steps all or nothing. So we went to serve this accessible stop and the steps raised and we couldn't get it back down. And our intent and the operator's instincts, which were very good, was to just get to the next accessible stop and let customers off, because he was very concerned, as were the staff in the field, about having customers step down that big 3-foot gap. But because it was a packed train, because customers didn't have good information about what was happening, they kept pulling the emergency alarms, and we were not able to get the vehicle to a place that we could safely offload it. That was coupled with very poor communications on our part, which is something we're working to shore up. One of which is looking at expanded hours of operations for our customer information officers. As you know, we have one of the most robust social media and customer information systems in the country, integrated into our control center. But as we prepare for the Warriors and we prepare for kind of more focus on late night activities, there's a need for increased hiring. So that's something that we are currently investigating. And then looking at yesterday, we also had a pretty significant 2-hour delay in the subway. It was related to another incident that we had on the night of August 15th. We are still investigating it, but it was in the same area where we had the major overhead wire down at the end of April. And it does kind of initially appear that there is some relationship in how those repairs were made. So we went in last night, we made adjustments. We believe that the area is now stable, but it's something we're going to be watching very closely, and I will report back when I have more information. I apologize that we're just kind of currently in the middle of that investigation. That being said, in contrast to the incident we had at the end of April, where we were bringing customers only to Castro and Church Station, because we have made a big investment in getting the Van Ness crossover and the Embarcadero crossover going, we were able to provide continuous train service. We single-track trains between Van Ness and Embarcadero. We're still learning as we go on this, but I think that by getting people at least to Van Ness and then providing some service through the subway in addition to service buses, we give people more choices, and we take what was a very bad incident and made it hopefully just a bad incident. And while none of that is good news, I am thrilled to report that we are making amazing progress with this current early shutdown. As you know, we've been shutting down the subway at 9:30 every night since August 12th and allowing our maintenance of way subway folks to go in and do that long deferred maintenance that really needs more like a 6 to 8 hour window that we don't typically have. Some of the things they have done is replace 8 switch points, replace corroded track, cleared a whole backlog of CPUC findings on our track side. They've also done a lot of accumulation, removal of sand and mud, and really cleaning out switches, which is going to allow for easier inspections moving forward and better visibility in the subway. Our signal maintenance crew is in the process of, they've replaced 800 of 1,300 backup batteries, which will also make us less vulnerable, and have inspected, done a very deep inspection of the entire ATCS loop cable from West Portal to Castro. And our overhead lines crew has replaced 1,200 feet of wire in 2 locations, and they have removed 8 splices in the system. And as you may recall, the defective splice was the cause of the large subway shutdown we had. In addition, our mechanical group is doing some of these deeper inspections of our fans and our fire suppression system. And our buildings and grounds folks have been giving the stations a really deep clean. Van Ness and Castro has been completed, and they're starting on Powell. So I'm very optimistic that this idea of twice a year during a relatively quiet time, getting in and doing these deeper repairs is going to buttress us up and protect us from major incidents throughout the year. I know I'm running short on time, so I will just say that the subway travel times have been relatively stable. We are experimenting with a new metric to share with you today. This is called slow subway trips. We looked at our scheduled subway time and we added the 4-minute kind of buffer for being late. And then we looked at what % of our trips are exceeding that. And that's an attempt to try to measure how variable the subway is. So,
can I pause you here on this slide?
Yeah.
The most significant drop in slow subway trips seems to be KLM outbound PMP. Is that due in some part to our management of the West Portal intersection?
I believe that it is, yes. And both a combination of the traffic changes, moving the 48 stop, the parking control officers.
So anecdotally, I have been out there, watched it several times, and it seems to be working very well. We'll get the Embarcadero switch when it comes up, but I did want to note that on this chart. So please pass along to our West Portal team that it appears to be good news, and there's no real other explanation for it, especially as we enter the summer, the school year.
Thank you for that feedback. And then the next metric I wanted to call your attention to that we have not been talking about previously is LRV vehicle availability. We have been talking about it just in the context of the LRV4s. We have a 90-day goal of increasing availability to 35 vehicles per day. Our interim goal for August was 30 vehicles a day, which we're very close to hitting and have been hitting over the last couple weeks. We increased the schedule very significantly over the last 18 months. We added 2-car T-line trains. We made running time adjustments on all of our lines, so everything got more cars. And in some ways, our schedule outpaced our vehicle availability. And part of that is because we only implement a new schedule 3 or 4 times a year, and we don't always know exactly where our vehicle availability is going to be at. So what that has meant is more 1-car trains, and I would like to see in the system. We're doing our best to space those out, and as the vehicle availability improves, that will also improve. But I did want to flag that when you're seeing 1-car trains, we still have more overall trains in the system than we ever have in the past. On a typical day, we're getting between 140 and 150 trains. We'd like to see that number increase to closer to 160, but big progress given that 18 months ago we were closer to 115, 120.
I have a question, do we have flexibility to fix those schedules? Because I understand that we have kind of a fixed schedule and it changes routinely, but on the lines where we might be understaffing for the consumers, all they know is that the bus is coming 8 minutes apart, 10 minutes apart, the schedule is immaterial to them. So are we able to make adjustments to kind of take into consideration the amount of minutes those buses are apart instead of relying on the underlying schedule?
We are able to do that, and we do, especially when we're managing this service. So instead of having one bus come in 10 minutes, another come in 30, we'll spread it out to be 20 minutes. But the kind of small changes you're talking about is pretty hard to do without a schedule.
I'm not saying I have any sort of big answers, but if there's any way to figure out, especially if there's a trend of certain lines where we maybe have a modified, maybe there's an A and a B or something like that we could work with.
Thank you. Yeah.
And on the LRB availability, it is frustrating for customers to see a one-car train in the rush hour when the system is backed up already. It's inefficient to have a one-car train. I assume that now that the coupling issue is fixed, and given what you're telling us here, there will be a priority placed on two-car trains in the morning commutes. Is that fair?
Yes, our vehicle availability constraints are worse in the afternoon than the morning because the...
Same idea, peak times. The difference is a little bit that the jam appears to be inbound, and so when you have a one-car train as opposed to a two-car train jamming it up in the inbound, so as long as, I just want to be clear that there is a priority to return to two cars in peak service whenever we can.
Absolutely, we always put out as many vehicles as are available, but I am routinely coaching my maintenance folks, and they're very bought into the fact that they're only sending out trains that they're really confident are not going to break, because just artificially increasing this number and then having problems down the line creates bigger inconveniences for our customers.
I have another question on the communications. I know that we upgraded our communication system and increased the opportunity to make system-wide announcements, but the episode on the 15th, which I texted you about because someone was really upset to be on a train for 45 minutes with no information. In that instance, do we know what might have went wrong with the information? The system, was it just too many people on the train didn't hear it, or is the sound quality still not good enough on our trains?
I believe in that instance it was due to the lack of management at the Transportation Management Center at the time, and as I was talking about looking at the hours of late night service, that adjustment needs to be made.
Thank you.
For the LRV4s, I remain optimistic that we are going to achieve our reliability goals. The issues that we've been having on the vehicles are isolated to very specific subsystems, and we have been putting in technical fixes. That being said, we are not meeting our current trajectory of the reliability program. We should have been seeing almost 7,000 miles between breakdowns in July, and we were closer to 4,300. A third of those breakdowns were related to the braking system. There's a hydraulic pumping unit that is locking up. It took a very long time to diagnose the problem because it was being impacted by an electrical surge that was only visible when the vehicle was operating. So they weren't able to replicate it in the factory setting or at a workbench. They have identified the problem. It's actually a 3-part problem, and we have a commitment to Siemens to have this repaired by the end of October on all of the vehicles. This is an item that's under warranty. These kind of fixes happen at Siemens' expense, but right now it's impacting our service significantly, and so we are working very closely with them to try to expedite these types of repairs and get back onto the reliability program. The goal is to get to 25,000 miles between breakdowns, which would essentially mean a breakdown, fewer than 3 breakdowns a year. And then in conclusion, I do want to highlight all of the amazing staff work that has gone into preparing for the Chase Center. Our strong focus is on safety and transit reliability, making sure that we are maintaining strong access to the hospital as well as to our customers along 3rd Street. We finished the platform this month, which was a huge milestone, and provides flexibility not just during events but at all times of day because of the crossovers that are in front and behind the platform. So work is underway. We're going to be starting some dry runs over the next couple weeks. We do anticipate that the first few events are going to be hard. We're going to learn as we go, but we've had a tremendous amount of coordination. Things like the ticket being your ride home is, I think, a great example of the upfront partnership for this work. So, packaged with my update, we also wanted to invite the public to provide comments on the transit working group that's underway. Vice Chair Borden, along with Ed Harrington, are chairing this work, which is sponsored by the mayor as well as Supervisor Peskin and Supervisor Mendelman. It's an opportunity to review the operations and look for opportunities to improve our work, to learn from other properties, and it has a really deep bench of industry experts, which have already been a huge resource to me personally as a sounding board as we work through some of our toughest problems. The first session was very interesting, both in kind of the ideas that they shared, but also in some of the areas where they endorsed steps that we're already taking, including the significant investment we've made in maintenance over the last several budgets under your leadership. The item today is an opportunity for the public to share any thoughts or feedback they have, which we will then share with the working group. So I welcome that discussion.
Okay.
And thank you, Julie. I just want to add as the vice chair and just talk a little bit about this group is mostly technical experts really focused on transit operations. They've worked around the country and they're really helping us drill deep down. We actually set up a series of subcommittees within the working group to really look at issues. One is technical and operations group, which I know has been working really closely with Julie, and they're really looking at the LRB issues, the fleet, scheduling and management, and all of those types of issues. And so there's that group's meeting, and there's organizational design and governance group looking at how we are structured and our financial authority, relations to the city, and all those kinds of issues. We have also a group focused on context in the region and looking at how we all piece together across the mobility spectrum, as well as things like growth and equity, land use planning. And then the final area is workforce and hiring groups, so really talking about training and hiring and maintenance and culture and all those things that matter to the agency. So we'll have our next meeting in September. The meetings are open to the public, but it's a passive meeting, so there aren't opportunities for public comment, which is one of the reasons we're having this opportunity today for you to offer comments on this working group. And I believe that the Board of Supervisors, either acting as a transportation authority or at the Board, Transportation and Land Use, may also conduct this similar meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Rick.
Just a very quick comment. I just want to say I appreciate your thoughtful approach to tracking metrics and data. And just since operator availability is so key to our ability to hit service delivery goals, I wonder if we can also track operator availability and how we're going towards hitting that full employment goal. Yeah.
Okay. My comments are three. Number one, thank you for the progress on the West Portal. It does seem to be working, both anecdotally and according to your data. So as I said before, please communicate with the team to keep up the good effort. Number two, I appreciate the updates on the significant delays or significant disruptions. You know what I'm going to say, but the outside lands things, for us to fail on a communication effort like that is not acceptable. We have a system so we can communicate to all trains. And even if it's difficult to have a communications operator going 24/7 at all times, We know in advance when the big events are going to be. We know in advance when the significant disruptions can be. And to have that many people on a train in the heat without some message from the MTA is a failure. And so please, in the future, when we're planning for these big events, even if we don't go to 24/7 communications, which might be a good idea, please make sure the communication is staffed for those events so that people can hear what's going on in live time. There was some fortune to come out of that. There was no panic, there was no physical injury, there was no stampeding, none of the stuff that can happen in a bad situation like that. So I'm happy that San Franciscans behaved so well. But also that's something we need to recognize, and even if we don't go to 24/7, recognize that for baseball games, for basketball games, for concerts and other special events where we're going to have large-scale transportation operations and off hours, we need to have a communications presence set up. Third, nothing in this presentation about the Embarcadero turnaround. I'm not going to ask you about it today. We have a lot of people here who want to talk about another aspect of our transit system. But we have addressed West Portal very well. From my reading of the data and from my own anecdotal experience every morning, the Embarcadero turnaround remains a choke point in the system. I've given you my personal ideas as to how to address it. I know you're digesting those. In the next report or the one after, I would like to hear a more robust presentation about how we're going to solve that choke point, please. Okay. Director, is anything else? Is there any public comment on item number 14?
Mr. Chair, yes. Herbert Weiner, followed by Bob Feinbaum, and then David Pilton.
Okay, we will do 1 minute apiece on this item. Mr. Weiner, welcome back. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Herbert Weiner. Well, for one thing, it's the composition of this board that bothers me. There should be critics as well as supporters of MTA on this board. You're going to have a biased report. Secondly, at the meeting, there are obviously going to be working groups. Critics should be included in that working group and not lined up against the wall like the peanut gallery that I experienced previously. You really have to have a critical report. And also the bottom line is we need more buses, we need more drivers, we need less takeaways at bus stops, and we need to have a better transportation system that really serves everybody. Right now, you have the El Terraville line, which is a disaster. You have the Van Ness project, which is a disaster. And the BRT will be a disaster, too. So, that's the bottom line. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Bob Feinbaum, followed by David Pilpel, and then lastly by Alita Dupree.
Mr. Feinbaum, welcome back.
Thank you. On behalf of the State Community, we submitted a 2-page letter to every member of this board as well as to the working group. And this, I hope, has been put in your packets and you've had a chance to look at it. Just one specific comment I'd like to make may not have been clear in the letter. We refer to inline coupling. By that, we mean something different than perhaps Julie's been talking about. She's talking often about coupling at the yard of trains that go out in service. We are talking about something different. We are talking about coupling trains, for example, at West Portal, the K and the L. We're talking about 2-car K, 2-car L, coupled at West Portal to make a 4-car train that goes downtown. That's the only way we're really going to get a significant improvement in passenger carrying capability.
Yes,
Thank you.
that was clear from your letter, and thank you for that.
Okay, good.
Next speaker, please.
David Pilpel, followed by Alita Dupree. Those are the last two people on this slide.
I'm Jerry Cawthon. David graciously let me come in here. I'm the president of the Bay Area Transportation Working Group. I've looked at this for a long time this summer. I just wonder, maybe you already know this, but a long time ago, the first idea was a 10-car subway to State College with coupling of West Portal and boats. So that was where the subway was kind of conceived. But then when the designer came along and actually put in the Muni's part of it, he was confronted with an unexpected problem. He's got 5 lines feeding into one. So as a result of that, they were having trouble with the coupling. So because of that, they abandoned the company with the 1- and 2-car train. When they did that, they cut the carrying capacity of the subway about 60%. And unless and until that comes back, where you can run 4 and 5 car trains instead of 1 and 2, they'll never be able to put in the full capacity of that subway, which today would probably cost about $15 million to build. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hopel. Thank you, and thank you for taking this item before the next item. I hope you've all gotten the State of Unity letter and had a chance to read it. We spent a lot of time trying to put some complicated thoughts on paper. I just wanted to emphasize the points about operator availability, street supervision, and route coupling, which was just discussed, at least during the peak periods. And I also wanted to support the efforts that Derek Kim talked about earlier. It didn't come back up after he spoke, but I think that's all to our point about employee training and development. We, on behalf of Save Muni, we are certainly willing to meet with any of you, with other members of the working group, with staff to discuss some of the details behind this. We have done analyses of transit supervisor staffing, operator availability, some of the organization chart issues. We're really looking both to current events, but also to the long term, and happy to discuss further. Thank you very much. Any further public comment?
Alita Dupree is the last person to turn on a speaker card on this.
Okay, is there any further public comment beyond this speaker? Okay, seeing none, public comment on this item will be closed after you speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Heineke. Alita Dupree for the record. We have to work on this subway, and it will affect time. We have to get our people in there to do this work and to be proactive, not reactive. This work to keep this subway running demands precision and exacting diligence. It's like a dance. Everybody's got to get the steps right. This is between failures. 6,000 is what New York City was at the low in 1980 with the graffiti and the broken lights and all kinds of problems. Now they're over 100,000. So why can't we have 100,000 miles between failures, just as New York, a system with over 6,000 vehicles? Consider that Grand Central can move 60 trains per hour through the Park Avenue Tunnel in one direction. I think that we must practice and increase. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, just an informational item, public comment is now closed. This takes us on to item number 15.